Let's have a big war eagle for Lewis Colbert.
I really thank y'all for letting me come. This is the kind of parties that I like doing. You know, my book came out last October. And if I get a little emotional about this, I apologize. But it's a story that took me 25 years that I could tell. I was asked many times over the years, why don't you write a book? It sounds such like a book. It actually sounds like a movie. Yeah, it does. But the road that it took to get to where I got was not an easy road. How many of you remember me playing at Auburn? Okay.
I'm old.
My dad does.
By the way, I remember his dad too. His dad put me in study hall. But I'm going to kind of start at the end and come back to the beginning. And the reason I'm going to do this is because a lot of people really don't know the story. Some people don't even know what I really accomplished at Auburn. And there's a good reason for that too, is that I played the same 4 years of this running back y'all may know. Yeah. Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was pretty good if y'all don't know that. So he got a lot of the attention. And once you know my story, you'll know that that was just perfect for me. I enjoyed being in the back. I enjoyed doing my job. I enjoyed, getting my scholarship, and I enjoyed getting an education. And Auburn University and Pat Dye actually changed my life forever. I cannot think of the school enough, can't thank Coach Dye enough. But I was actually the first 4-year starter punter for Auburn University. I was the first All-American punter for Auburn University. My greatest honor at Auburn was I was elected team captain in 1985. That doesn't really happen for a punter. No kickers, trust me. However, it did happen, and it was Bo Jackson, myself, and Harold Hallman was the captains, offense, defense, special teams for that year. And usually they just name two. I was also voted to the team of the century for the first 100 years of Auburn football. I still, 26 years later, still hold a number of records. I'm still the leading punter for the university, or the football team. And I ended up getting drafted, the first punter taken in 1986 by the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a pretty good career, right? However, I never realized what all of that meant until, I guess, probably a year and a half ago, and where I had a brush with mortality. I almost died from pneumonia. And at that point, I started to think about my contributions to life, to the world. You know, who have I helped? Unfortunately, that list became very short. And that's because I had my head down all my whole life. And the reason I had my head down is because of the way I was born and the way I grew up and what I had to deal with. When I was born, my leg stopped at the ankle. It was turned 90 degrees, folded in half, and folded again to the backside of my shin. They gave me a 10% chance of ever walking. 90% chance you'd never walk. 3 days after my birth, I went into my first surgery. And at that point, I spent the next 5 years going through surgeries. You know, and there's a lot of this stuff I didn't even realize because I wouldn't talk about it. And you don't have to answer this, but has there anybody ever dealt with something or experienced something or did something that you felt like if you ever started talking about, you wouldn't ever quit crying? Think about that. First 6 months that I started writing this book, I thought she was going to put me in a insane asylum. Because I didn't realize all of the stuff that I had pent up, that I'd locked away. A week, well, it may not have been a week, may have been 3 to 5 days after I was born, my dad showed up. He dropped my mom off at the hospital and didn't stay. He come back 5 days later. She explained to him what happened. His next comment, well, Lewis is not coming home with us then. He died when I was 5. I don't remember him very well, and little at all, because really he was never around. My mom worked in a cotton mill, and I'd say the father figures in my life weren't very impressive until I got to Auburn. And that's when Pat Dye actually stepped in, unbeknownst to him, but made a huge difference in my life. I named the book The Unlikeliest Auburn Tiger, and the reason I named it that is because there is a number of things that I talk about in the book that had happened this way or happened that way or not happened. Everything that I just told you that I accomplished at Auburn would have never existed. And I give you an example is that the doctors, this story is a story of divine intervention if there ever was one. The doctors were not orthopedic surgeons. They were just normal surgeons. The chances that I came out of this walking is remarkable when you sit back and go through the things and talk about and see everything that happened. I had 4 major operations where they took and pinned my foot back, turned it sideways to the outside because they classified it as club feet. But most people think that club feet are just feet that are turned inward for the most part. Some are very severe, and mine was probably as severe as it gets. But I spent the first 5 years in cast up to my hip. This right here is the brace, the last brace I wore. And without that brace, I don't think that I'd have been able to walk. I learned to walk on this brace. My brothers was 15 years older than I was. By the time I was 5 years old, they're out on their own. They're 20. I grew up pretty much by myself. I got myself up going to school. My mom worked at the cotton mill. She worked many double shifts a lot of times. And, I spent a lot of times, just really wondering why me as I grew up. What did I do to deserve this? Years later, I found out and understood that the good Lord gave me everything I needed. I just wasn't listening and paying attention. And the only thing that I really regret is that I wished it wouldn't have taken me 25 years to deal with this, to talk about it, and to hopefully make a difference in people's lives, especially the young kids. And I know it's already happened. It's been a little challenging on some of the letters and the notes. And one event, whenever we were at, and bless her heart, this young old lady come and grabbed me around the neck, and I really was getting nervous there for a minute. Because, I was like, I'm about to turn red here, because she was just, and crying, and, I'm not really trying to make people cry, just being honest, that, you can overcome adversity, you can accomplish your goals, but there's definitely a few things that need to happen, and that's you got to have determination. As Pat Dye classified it whenever he agreed to write the foreword to the book, and he called it mental toughness, and his statements were that he had never seen anybody that was as mentally tough. And, my wife of 26 years can vouch that I can be extremely mentally tough. And it was a good thing for me during those years, but I really took it overboard because I never let anything get to me. Unfortunately, the last year and a half, it seems like everything is getting to me. It's a challenge. We're talking to a lot of schools and kids, and we had one lady to come up to us, and she was talking about her daughter that at 10 years old, she had been born with a club foot, and at 10 years old they amputated her leg from the knee down. You know, it made me stop and think how lucky I really was. And it wasn't easy, I can assure you that. I grew up into sports, but they wouldn't let me play contact sports. I kind of snuck my way into playing baseball, and I had to do a lot of things to keep people from really knowing my situation. However, you know how kids are, it didn't take them long to figure it out. Needless to say, I got in a few altercations a few times, and, but that stuff, it wears on you after a while, you know, especially when you're questioning yourself and why, you know, you're doing the why me, what did I do to deserve this kind of thing. But I got pretty good at baseball. Actually had scholarships for baseball. My senior year, however, I was a pitcher, throwing almost 90 miles an hour as a senior. I mean, it was really looking, and I loved baseball. I really did. Football wasn't a concern of mine. I wanted to play, tried 3 different times. It didn't happen. Each time ended in some type of injury. Every time it ended with an injury to my ankle. You was mentioning the individual that you could hear his knee pop on the game she was watching on TV. Same thing happened to me in my sophomore year in high school. I planted, my ankle popped, and there for a while I thought it was really bad because it had blown up. And at that point, well, I got hauled off to the hospital, and at that point, I had to sit down with my coach and say, I can't play football anymore. I can't do it. I don't have the necessary tools to make that happen. So I became a manager. My senior year, in those 2 years as being a manager, I started picking up the football. Started kicking it around. Almost gave that up because every time I punted that football, sorry, it hurt like hell. And it did for 2 years. My senior year, I went to him and asked him, could I just punt? And he made a special consideration to allow me to do that. So I only played 1 year of high school football. Wasn't recruited. I made All-State in 1 year, believe it or not. But I thought I was going to play baseball. So I wasn't worried about it. Coming around to the spring of my senior year, haven't lost a game since I've been pitching at Glenwood High School. 3 years pitching. Hadn't lost a game. Never did lose a game. However, that last game I pitched, I popped my shoulder. They told me it was a rotator cuff. Here we go again. It's like the harder you try, it seems like every time you turn around, somebody's kicking you in the shins. So, as many surgeries as I'd had, now I'm done. I'm just going to borrow money, go to school, try to get my education. That's what I did. I went to Auburn, sat in the auditorium in July. I was actually going to try to go to the summer quarter. And I sat down, this lady calls my name from the front of the auditorium. Never been to the school before. Why are they calling me? I go down there, she had a note for me. It was a note from Coach Dye. You know, you never can tell whose lives you affect, good or bad. And there was a person that had conveyed some information, and he wanted to talk to me. I talked to him, he offered me a chance to walk on. It was probably my junior year before he knew that something wasn't right. Because my right leg to this day was half the size of my left from the knee down. A lot of the rest of it is just history of what was accomplished, but you know, there was some trying times, and some of you may have heard of Pat Dye's legendary workouts when he came to Auburn. I'm here to one to vouch. Those things are true. I've never experienced anything like it, but it just, every time, I must have quit 1,000 times. But it just seemed like right when I was fixing to take that step of saying I can't do it no more, something would happen. One of them was Tracy Rocker. Y'all remember Tracy Rocker, defensive lineman? He was my running partner. It's amazing I have to run with a defensive lineman. I wasn't very fast, that's for sure. Or should I say, maybe I wasn't, he was fast. But that guy must have known. And I literally just about given up because I was in a predicament. My ankle was hurting so bad it was swelling up. I mean, it was just painful. And he reached over and put his hand on my back, and I was bent over. I won't tell you what I was doing. And he goes, "Can't quit now, boy." And those words, man, just, you know what? You're right. I can't. So I kept going. But I had to find a way to if I wanted to be there, I was going to have to find a way to get good. And I found that way, and that was in Bo Jackson. Not him as a player. We know how damn good he is. But you know, the things that he and I did off the field, and the conversations we had, just watching somebody perform at that level made all the difference in the world. But when you go back and you think about, you know, or when I go back and think about when I first came to Auburn, and I had to go out there and we had to do our fitness test of running and lifting and that kind of stuff. And I sat down to do the bench press. Weightlifting coach laughs at me. For real. Leg press was even worse. I never lifted a weight in my life. I think I bench pressed 130, 135 pounds, and maybe leg pressed up 350 pounds. The 45-degree leg press. By the time I left there, I was bench pressing over 300 and leg pressed in almost 1,200. I tell you, the program at Auburn was phenomenal because I was living proof. Because if you'd have seen me then to when I graduated, what a huge difference. But that difference allowed me to lead the nation in net punting my senior year. You know, I go back and think about it as some of the games, and whenever I start doing a book and some of the highlights, and I look at it, and I'm like, it's almost an out-of-body experience to me because I didn't think about it then. I look at it, I'm like, wow. I even went, wow. You know, there was one I was watching, and this is a story for you guys in regards to the Alabama-Auburn game, 1983. And if some of you really knew what happened on that football field, you wouldn't have been as proud about us winning because it was that close we wouldn't have won. And it had been about me. That'd have been even worse. You remember the game, the thunderstorms?
Yes.
I'm sitting there looking like while we're out here, and they just keep playing. But, I mean, it was awful. It was torrential downpours. We're going in about the 30, 35-yard line. Coach Dye calls for a field goal. Yeah. Does you know the guy? No, you don't know the guy. You know the guy. So he calls a field goal. The field goal team goes out on the field, right? And it's raining. God, it's raining. And they're standing around. Keep in mind that football's laying out there, right? Finally, Coach Dye says, no, we're not going to kick field goal. We're going to punt it. Oh, hold on a minute. We're going to take a delay game. Got it. We go to the field. I'm looking, trying to figure out where they're coming. Know they're coming because it's getting toward the end of the game, right? I did, and of course, punt, Auburn punt. That's all I could hear the first couple of years. Punt, Bama punt. Punt, Auburn punt. I'm like, Lord of mercy. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm looking to the right, and I was like, okay, they're coming from the right. I snapped my head back, and the ball's halfway to me. He wasn't supposed to snap it. It was delay a game. But the center was on the field. He was snapping for the field goal. Nobody told him. Now, from the spectators and the fan, all this looked great. I'm not going to tell you where I was at in that moment. I grabbed the ball. I don't know how I caught it. I'm honest as I can be. I don't know how I caught it. That ball was soaking wet. I mean, it was sopping wet. It had been laying out there the whole time. I just grabbed the ball. It stuck to my hand when I caught it. I reached and I punted the ball, and that ball takes off. It goes down the field. It hits on the 5-yard line and goes up and off. Looks real great, doesn't it? But if I'd have missed that snap, somebody was watching over me that day, that's for sure. Those games are, they're tough. Those games are tough. You know, the first one I played in, I'll be honest with you, I was scared to death. I was. I'm not kidding. First punt of the game. And obviously, when my up-back realized that I was a little nervous because all I could hear was that punt, Auburn, punt, punt, Auburn, punt. He turned around, and it's like he spoke to me, and I couldn't hear anything else in that statement. And he goes, Louis, just punt the ball the way you've been punting all year. Ain't nobody getting by. He was true. Nobody got by him. But what I'm getting at is that some people reach out, don't even know they reach out. Some people make a difference, they don't even know they make a difference. And so for so many years, I really never reached out to try to make a difference, and that's what I'm trying to do with the book today. Is get to as many people, as young people as I can, and hopefully, give some inspiration that things are possible, even in the darkest hour and the darkest moment. Because you just never know unless you keep going after it. And one thing Coach Dye always told us is just keep chopping the wood. First 3 times I heard that, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not swinging no axe. But it makes so much sense today. You know, you think about things to a certain level, then you start thinking about things at a wholly different level. And I was considered to be handicapped, so it made it even tougher. There's a lot of great things out there, and we just need to take and spend the time to look at them. We need to spend the time to put your head and your heart in the right direction. And I ended the book with this by saying that, if you get your head and heart in the right direction, you never have to worry about your feet. And, that's so true. And it was for me. But unfortunately, it took me too many years to get to that level. And of course, the scars, they define you, and they define me way too long. Or they were defining me way too long, but they really don't. They remind you where you've been. They remind you what you had to overcome. And I never realized the impact or the potential impact that I could make on some young people's lives until I actually sat down. But it took me having a brush with my own life to wake up, and that's a shame. It really is. With that, if anybody's got any questions, be glad to answer any questions. I'll be glad to tell some more stories. I've got a ton of them. I don't want to wear y'all out with them.
So, did you play when your friend was there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the game that you're talking about, I know it's not the rain game, so it's the rain game. The one where we finally beat Bama after that streak of
82. That was
82.
Yeah, that was my first year.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first one I went into, and Dennis Carter told me, "Don't worry about it, I got it." but all of those games were tough. They had the momentum. They were in people's heads. I'm telling you. I mean, they almost got in mine that day, and I'm not an easy person for somebody to get in my head. But I'm here to tell you, and I walked on that field, and that day is when I learned what an Auburn-Alabama game was about. And I had to grow up quick in that one. And I'll be honest with you, I was getting a little worried until Dennis made that comment to me, and I'm like, it's like, wow, I get it. I ain't got to do this by myself. All I got to do is do my part. And from that day forward, that first year was tough for me. I punted more times that year than any other year. And I punted more coffin corners than Carter's got pills. I did what I needed to do. With Coach Dye, when I sat down with him that day, and he tells me, he goes, I never told you this. He goes, but you allowed me to call my games differently. And that's what I did. I went, wow. Can you run that by me and help me understand that? He goes, I never had to worry about you. I didn't have to worry about you taking the ball and running with it. I didn't have to worry about you hitting a bad ball or shame. Honestly, I can only remember one ball that I had a quote, shame to in my football career at Auburn. And that one was because somebody barely got their finger on it because they let him come right up the middle at Florida State in that 42-41 victory. And that one was 12 yards, or 2 yards. And so it's not considered a blocked punt. It crossed the line of scrimmage. Didn't help the average, but it's not a blocked punt.
How many years you played pro ball?
4 years. Unfortunately, that was, I made the all-rookie team that year, my first year. Then we had to strike. And then, it was nothing ever worked out, and I ended up taking a fall and damaging my sciatic nerve in my kicking leg. And that one I never was able to come back from. Even to this day, it gives me problems.
Two questions, please. First of all, one, it's a great story. It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you. And I did it without crying this time.
Yeah. We made up for it, I can assure you. Number one, as a kicker, I always wondered what it felt like having, 10 mountains getting ready to attack you. That was one thing. And two, I was just wondering, what are you doing now?
I'll answer the second one first. I work for a company called Excel, and it's a third-party logistics, warehousing, and transportation company. I've been with them 12 years now, and I'm responsible for North America. My customer is Goodyear, and I'm responsible for North America warehousing and transportation for Goodyear tires. The first one, in regards to how I dealt with those guys, and I've got a picture somewhere that we probably need to get. It's me standing on the sideline, Kansas City Chiefs. No, this has to do from the back. Every one of those guys were like right here. The average was 6'6", 310. Okay? It's the funniest thing you ever see. And their heads are going like this, and all of a sudden it's like, whoop. Guess who's standing right there? That's me. But, you could read, their numbers and their names and all that kind of stuff. Oh, you see my head. But to answer your question, is what I learned after that first year is that, and having a great team and building those confidence and trust and getting to know people, I can honestly tell you after that first year at Auburn, I never worried about it. It never, and I honestly believe made a huge difference in how I punted a football. Because you did not get me to flinch. Whenever I took a snap and punted a football, I did not flinch. I did not pick my head up. Because I knew that those guys were going to do their part. You just knew it. And the way Coach Dive coached and the workouts we did, and you knew you had people that were determined to make a difference for Auburn football. And we did.
Did you ever have a Coach Ty calling you, run a few fakes, get an important first down or a touchdown? That ever happened for you?
I pulled a fake in a Senior Bowl, and I almost threw it for a touchdown. The guy, it hit him in bad spot, right in the hands.
Okay.
But
You
no.
don't send him a Christmas card, I guess.
No, but no, he never asked me to do a fake. Our fakes were done with the up back. They'd snap to the up back.
In other words, you couldn't run real well.
I couldn't run real well. However, I'll tell you a funny story. I haven't been clocked ever better than a 4.7, 4.8 maybe, somewhere in there. Well, and amongst our group, it's not. I'd say maybe a 4.8 is probably what I averaged. I had somebody to tell me that I run a 4.6 in the Auburn game in my senior year. Greg Richardson, the longest punt I had returned ever, was in our senior year, and he was returning it, and he broke loose, and I run him down. I've got a picture of it in the book, just to prove it. Somebody said that they went back and checked it and said I run a 4.6, and I'm like, well, he wasn't getting by me. That's all I can say. I couldn't have stood it, because I would have been. That's one thing I remembered about my whole collegiate career is that Alabama had a punt return for a touchdown. It was close. It was close.
Did you ever talk to Bo Jackson?
I haven't talked to him in years, unfortunately. And whenever we graduated, and of course, where he went, where I went, two different ways. He's a hard guy to catch up with. He really is.
He's in Chicago.
He's in Chicago.
Several businesses.
Yeah. He owns a bank. Yeah, he owns a bank.
Wow. He does own a bank.
I don't know too many people own a bank, but
Have you met Coach Chiswick or any of the current staff, and would you have any comment on him?
I haven't met Chiswick yet. I'm hoping to meet him in 3 weeks. Yeah. I actually tried to meet with him twice when I went to Auburn. When I started in on the book, both times he wasn't in Auburn at the time. And of course, I've got a day job, so I have to work around those things. But I hope to get a chance to sit down and talk to him. And I have met Tony Barbie, the basketball coach. And he was at the Montgomery Auburn Club, which he was speaking at, and I got to speak. Didn't know I was going to get to speak, but I did get to speak. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. He seems to be a great guy too. He seems very, and I got to speak to him for a long time afterwards. He seems to be very similar in his coaching, from what I gathered from that meeting as Coach Dow was. He's building a foundation. So it'd be nice to see, a great Auburn basketball team.
Yes, I think the guy's got a coach there.
He really does seem to be. He seemed to be a great guy when I was talking.
He made me want to go to basketball games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Louis, can I make one comment?
Yes.
I just want to let everybody know that anybody that made a poor investment in a Michael Dyer jersey can now just say they got a Lewis Kohler jersey.
There you go.
Problem solved.
I owned it first. I owned it first. But no, yeah, it was good and bad everywhere. But I can sit here and talk all day long. I mean, because of the difference that Auburn University, Auburn football, Coach Dye, and a couple other people made in my life. Because I can honestly say that, getting back to the title of the book, if that note wouldn't have been there at the auditorium that day, I'd have never walked on. And it's really ironic that I grew up with so much anger and frustration about my leg and my foot and the problems it caused and stuff I have to deal with, for it to be what changed my life forever in a positive way. It's like, wow. But I mean, it's a huge, huge turnaround, really is.
Why did you choose Auburn? What got you there in the first place?
I was always a homebody, and it was 25 miles down the road when I grew up. You know, I will admit that I wasn't an Auburn fan, I wasn't a Bama fan, I wasn't a college football fan. Now, if you want to talk to me about baseball in those years, what I could tell you a lot of things, because I'm gonna tell you, whenever I hurt my shoulder, I thought my life was over. I had never had anything to hurt me so bad, and I don't mean physically. I mean mentally. It messed me up for a long time. Because I mean, I would have bet everything. I mean, I was batting over 400, and I've averaged 15 to 22 home runs a year. Never lost a game pitching, and then here it is, my livelihood or potential livelihood, just taken away from me, just like right at the last minute of the game, you know. So I even went into Auburn a little frustrated, a little mad, and then, you know, like at walk-on, that when I finally invited me to walk on, and I go down to the equipment room, and my number in high school was 5, and the only way I got this number is because Pat Sullivan's brother was in front of me, who was number 5, Joe Sullivan, and he quit that day. He quit right in front of me. And I just reached right over the counter and said, may I have that? Before somebody else got it. You know? I mean, you know, just, God, it gives you, to me, you know, thinking back on it now, it just gives me freaking goosebumps. When you start laying those things out on a timeline, and, you know, it's like, okay, if I wouldn't have hurt my shoulder, nope, I'd have never picked up a football again. You know, it just.
You walked on. Were you the starting punter that year? You were walk on.
1981 is when I got there and I walked on. They had a punter returning, Alan Bollinger. He was in trouble from the previous year. I think he averaged like 38 yards or something. And yeah, he had a bad year. And when I got to the football field, there were 17 punters out there. I was one of them. But he held on to it, and he punted in 81. And you know, another story that really makes you go, wow. When you put things in perspective, like what I was saying about my ankle was what I hated the most, or my foot's what I hated the most, to become to make the difference in my life, to another ankle is the reason I became the first string punter in 1982, because the backup punter to Alan Bollinger had been the backup punter for 3 years. So he was going into his senior year. All right. We had whittled it down to I was number 2 on the depth chart. He was number 1. We go into the A-Day game. He kicks a low liner. Guy's returning the ball. He goes make a tackle and he breaks his ankle. His right ankle. And I went to first string and I started every game for the next 4 years. But, you know, it's just, I mean, it was his misfortune, but, you know, if you start putting those things together, it's like somebody saying, okay, I know where you're going, get out of the way. You know? It really does. And that's what this book's about. It goes into from day one. And I'll tell you this, I didn't tell you a lot of stuff today that's in the book. And I didn't tell everything that's in or that's happened. There's a lot of stuff I didn't put in. I said I was over it, but not all the way. There's a few things that I just hadn't gotten past that I couldn't put in the book when I was growing up. So, you know, for some of you that's read the book, they can understand that what I'm saying a little more, that the challenge was a little more difficult. And I made them, I told the stories in here that explain how difficult they were, but there's still a little bit more. It's a wonder I'm standing here today, I'll be honest with you.
So you gonna write a sequel? No.
This,
I didn't mean to ask you.
this right here, everything I did and accomplished and went through, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. That was tough. That was tough for a lot of reasons. Anybody else got any questions?
Your favorite game at Auburn?
My favorite? You know, I've always classified them as the big SEC games. And to me, whenever I was playing, those games I seem to have just gotten up more for them because they were hugely important. You know, I can remember things like being in Tennessee and Neyland Stadium and 100,000 people, and I'm about to punt out of the back of the end zone. I mean, literally, the line is right there. I mean, I'm trying to get as much distance as I can between me and the ball, but there wasn't a whole lot because the ball's on like the 2-yard line. And guess what was right behind me? The student section. I'm being absolutely sincere here when I say that there was so much noise and stomping at the stadium, the ground was vibrating under my feet. The ball was jumping on the ground. And it was vibrating so bad that it was messing with my eyes. I mean, you know, you sit here and do this number right here. I mean, it was making my eyes jump. But you should have heard how quiet it got if you weren't there. Because the one that come out of the back of the end zone was about 74 yards. And it got deadly quiet. Deadly quiet. But I mean, you know, it's like those things can go south really quick, right? You know? And that was one thing that was hard about me with the book, is sit here to talk about what I did, how I did it, what I accomplished, because I've never been a me person. It's always been about teamwork and working together. And there's a big reason for that growing up. Because of my situation, I didn't want to be talking about me. I want to be standing in the back. You talk about all these other people, don't talk about me. Leave me alone. So it was something I had to get over to even do the book. And it still is not, I'm not comfortable with it. I can do it now. And the way that I do it is I say that, okay, you talking like this is for a good reason and for a good cause. So deal with it. That's what I do. But, you know, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Alabama. And if I had to rank those, Alabama.
I'm going to stop him right here and you come up and ask him questions as you have him sign your book. Louis, I have no doubt that we have all been blessed by your being here. There's a reason that the AAA sent you to us. Some of us weren't quite sure who was coming.
I'm glad you put 3 A's on there.
Sometimes we don't. When they made us join, it cost us a lot.